Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Lemme Splain podcast, where we sit and talk about things when there is too much to sum up. And today we are with Sarah Cawley, who is the software training and engineering manager at a nonprofit called Techtonica, which you have probably never heard of, but is pretty awesome. So, Sarah, would you like to start with what is Tectonica and what is your job at Tectonica?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, Tectonica is an amazing nonprofit that helps women and non binary adults seeking economic empowerment get into the tech industry. So, we are a completely free, full stack bootcamp that teaches the PERN stack. So, that's Postgres, Express, React, and Node. We offer our participants living stipends and computers. And the way that we're able to do this is we work with corporations that are trying to increase their diversity, and they basically pay us to help them get amazing, highly trained junior developers. So the process is a 6-month intensive learning environment for our participants, and then 6 months of either job placement with one of our sponsor companies or job placement search support. So we help folks land the interviews to get the jobs that they need to get into the tech industry. And my role there, I am the software training and engineering manager, which is a fun acronym for STEM. And I basically manage the individuals in the program. So I help them through the program and also help them get the skills that they need as far as communication and working in a corporate environment to succeed in their first roles and for the rest of their career. I also manage the program. So that includes changing a curriculum, connecting to past participants and seeing how they're doing, and just sort of the overall flow of everything. So this is an amazing program. I haven't heard of anything quite like it out there. And I'm really happy to be a part of helping the world become a little bit better.
That's awesome. So why don't we take a minute and kind of walk through what the need of the program is? So one of the things that I found interesting is that you guys specifically target BIPOC and neurodiverse candidates. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
So how do you guys go about doing that kind of targeting and recruiting?
Yeah, so we are active on social media, and we specifically reach out to like the Tinas in Tech and other groups like that to help get our message out there. We're also very fortunate that we have been fully remote since the start of the pandemic, and we were in the Bay Area for a few years before that. We are currently on our 10th cohort, and we're now getting pretty good word of mouth. So our graduates are seeing fast improvements in their lives after they've gotten these jobs, and they're telling all their friends about it and all of their social network about it. So we do that. We also reach out to influencers that are making awesome little TikToks about coding, and basically just trying any way we can to get our message out there.
Okay, awesome. And so what the other thing I found interesting is that, we'll talk about the programming and the technical aspect of your boot camp. But what I also, as someone who was herself, I was first person to have an undergrad degree in my family, and the first woman to have a graduate degree in my family, right? And so for me, when I went into corporate, I was a first generation corporate person. And I found it interesting that you guys, God knows I could have used it. You guys have, you specifically help coach people so that they can adapt to the corporate environment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we found very early on that a lot of the people coming to our program, because we're specifically low income and we are targeting folks that might be first generation sort of blue collar workers, they don't know how to communicate in a business setting. And they've maybe only worked retail or customer service in their lives. And the expectations for how you communicate, how you talk to your manager, how you grow your career in those fields are very different than how you do it in a corporate setting. So We have a weekly soft skills day where we go over different topics. How to handle bias in the workplace, how to handle microaggressions, how to communicate with your boss, how to deliver feedback. And we do a lot of practice with that throughout the program. And I think that all of us that have been in the corporate world for a while know that the employees that succeed are those that are able to bring those soft skills to the table. And so we all know we can teach anybody to code, but you can't necessarily teach somebody to be nice and an awesome coworker. And a lot of that is picked up through how you interact with other folks. But because we're dealing with a lot of folks who are neurodivergent and maybe don't pick up stuff the same way, we found that straight up saying, this is how you create this message. This is how you manage this difficult feedback situation, gives
Yep.
them the feedback framework to have those difficult conversations and not just shy away from that. And
Yep.
because of that, our sponsor companies love us. I mean, we're turning out really highly educated folks, but it's that soft skills aspect that I think really separates us from other programs and makes our graduates so highly sought after, because they have that soft skills component because we have been directly coaching them on it for 6 months.
No, man, I'm not gonna lie. I totally could have used that
Yeah.
because
A lot of folks can. So many folks can. And we sort of take it for granted that everybody knows how, like, I remember we had somebody apply for the program and she had an emergency. I had to take her pet to the vet, and she didn't want to email to say, I can't come to the interview, because she thought it would be rude to email us late at night and it would be better just not show up for the interview,
yeah, no.
because that's what she had been taught. And that's not accurate, like send the email, do the communication. And teaching folks that so helps them on with their career and gives them such a leg up. And I think that is honestly the most impactful part of our program, is having those lessons and having open discussions. We really work on creating a nurturing, caring environment. So yesterday was bias day, and the cohort had an awesome conversation for an hour where they were open and honest about, these are the biases I have. I did bias testing. I now realize I have these biases, and this is how I'm going to actively work to counteract them when I'm working with folks. And what is cool is that bringing that awareness into the workplace, they're then able to have those conversations with folks that haven't thought about those topics before either, and
Mhm.
help them also expand their horizons and how they deal with folks that look different than them. And it's kind of, a trickle down effect, or it actually works. So it's not trickle down, but it's a growth effect where it sort of rubs off on everybody. And we've seen entire teams change their dynamic with just one of our grads.
That's
And it's really awesome to see.
because it's almost like I always like I've talked about this, that just recently I had to sit somebody down and almost like break them into the mafia.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that moment where you see somebody come in and you're waiting to see if they know what's up. And if they don't, eventually they kind of crack, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to sit them down, especially with like younger kids coming in, and you
Yeah.
have to sit them down and be like, all right, this is how this works. Like, and that's why I was joking. I'm like, it's almost like somebody, just opens the door and is like, hey dude, come in here. Like that happened to me at multiple work.
Mm-hmm.
At least there was a workplace that I was at. I'm not going to name it, but it had some issues with
Mm-hmm.
its culture amongst how women were treated, and
Mm-hmm.
it was almost like the women there would wait until it happened to you, and then somebody would pull you aside and be like, "All right, now that you know the deal, this is how you deal with it, right?" And then
Mm-hmm.
that company got bought. And it's like an underground network. And the company I was at got bought by another company. So I was company A and they were company B. And I watched a female tech manager from company B come in and ask a male company A manager a question. And he just flat out lied to her. Like lied to her.
Wow.
And I heard him do it. And from across the hallway, I then looked and was like, hey, don't I know you from, and like the such and such women in tech? Like, come on over here. I don't remember your name, right? And
Yeah,
she,
yeah,
like, but women know, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
And that's one thing that we've really struggled with in the program is, do we make the program, because we're preparing people to work, right? Do we
yep.
make the feel of the program feel like that, feel like what it's going to feel like in that environment, or do we make it super lovey-dovey and super
Right.
awesome and encouraging and great? And we've had struggles trying to figure that out, because when we've been way too, yeah, this is all going to be awesome, then folks get into that first job and they're like, their eyes are opened and they're shocked as what they've gotten themselves into. So what we've landed on that seems to be working pretty well is, we make our space what we want the world to be: completely encouraging, completely opening, completely supportive. And we're very honest about what they're going to see when they get out there, and that we're trying to give them the tools to manage with it. And I think that works so well for a couple of reasons. One, it shows folks that this is what it could be. It's not this right now, but we can make the world this
Yep.
awesome, encouraging, supportive space. The more awesome, encouraging, supportive, non toxic folks we get into the workplace. And you're going to face misogyny. You're going to face racism. You're going to face people microaggressing against you left and right. So, how do you manage that and keep yourself sane and keep yourself from burning out when you're dealing with those? Because it's really hard. I mean, software engineering is a very hard job
Yeah.
anyway. And then you put on top of that dealing with all the folks that don't think you're capable of it based on how you look. And I it just adds a whole nother layer to it. So learning how to manage your own feelings and energy is so important to not burn out. There's a reason that it's a ridiculous number. Maybe you have it in front of you, but it's like 60% of women leave
That's
tech within the first 10 years or 5 years, just
yeah.
because of that burnout. And it sucks that we have to learn how to manage it and it's not the other way around,
Mhm.
but we're affecting change and it's a hard road.
Yeah. No, and it's also it's understanding those nuances in a way of how to function in that environment and find your own people. Because
Mhm.
that's kind of what makes it that's what makes it navigable, honestly.
Yeah.
That you find your own people where you're like, "You too, huh? All right."
Mhm. Yeah, you find the
Until
people
that
you
moment
can
where
vent
somebody
to.
opens the door and you're inducted into the mafia. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And learning who the safe people are to vent to.
Yeah.
Because if you're coming from like working in the restaurant industry, everybody's venting to everybody because it sucks for everybody.
Yep.
And realizing when you get into that job, maybe this coworker isn't a safe person to vent to about this.
Exactly.
So, how do you join your local women who code? How do you get into your company's ERGs? How do you find the safe folks that you can have that venting, and then figure out that nice way to say, "Hey, dude, that wasn't cool." So, yeah, it's really important part of the job. And like you're saying, it's really sad that there isn't explicit training for most women entering the field. And I'm so happy that we've added that to our curriculum. And honestly, I think that that's one of the most impactful things that we do is have that training.
Well, I mean, that's just it because then, and full disclosure for everybody, I met Sarah at a mentorship thing where I was giving a lecture on executive presence.
Hmm.
And half the women in there were like, how do I, how, like, it was like, how do I get taken seriously?
Yeah.
And the way that women are taught to behave is not necessarily what is going to get you taken seriously in the
Hmm.
workplace, especially in technology.
Yeah. Yeah. We were doing a practice. So I have a weekly communication practice, and that there's scenarios like, you woke up late and you're going to be late to your meeting. What do you do? And for the first couple of weeks, the Slack messages that people are pretending to send are like 4 sentences long. And
Yeah.
it's all like, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, I'll make it up, I'll do this. And it's like, no, you can just say, I will be 10 minutes late to the meeting.
Right.
Period. You don't need to apologize for that. You don't need to make excuses. You don't need to make it up. You just need to let everybody know that you're on your way. You're running 10 minutes late. And unlearning that, sorry, please forgive me. I'm sorry to take up space and ask these questions is so hard for folks. We kind of have a sorry pool when we're in meetings, and we call each other when they say sorry for like, sorry, I have a question. Sorry, can you help me?
Yep.
Don't be sorry. Take up that space. Ask that question. You deserve it.
It's almost, and it's such a thing where we all have to unlearn it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've all been taught that we all have to apologize all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so sad when people are apologizing for their intelligence. Like these are intelligent questions that folks are asking. They're just asking for a little bit more clarity. And it's like, you understand 90% of this very difficult topic, and you're asking a very valid question right now. Like, you're awesome. Don't apologize for that.
Exactly. Oh yeah, and I've had that with like, I've sat next to female executives and had them like hesitantly raise their hand. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, do you see that dude over there? He's got his hand all the way in the air. Get your hand all the way in the air.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So the soft skills are amazing. And the fact that you guys are teaching that is fantastic. So with that, as part of the engineering, like, what are you guys working on in terms of what you're teaching them on a technical level? And then why, and like you said, you chose the curriculum. That's something that you've crafted. So why did you choose that stack? And how does that then translate into the skills that are needed out in the workplace today for junior devs?
Totally. So we're doing Pern because it's all JavaScript, and it's React is so popular right now, right? Everybody's using React and Node. And there was a bit of a debate between relational and non-relational databases, and we decided to go relational just because I think if you understand relational databases, going to non-relational is easier than the other way around.
Yeah.
And the way the program works is it's 6 months of kind of group study time. The first 2 months are cramming your head with all of those topics. So at the end of 8 weeks, you can make a full stack app, connecting to external APIs, creating your own databases, making your own calls, building a full React app. Is it janky? Yes. Does it suck? Totally. But you understand the concepts of it. And the goal for that first 8 weeks, one, is to get kind of the knowledge in the head, but also to teach folks, how do you research these topics on your own? So our curriculum is pretty open-ended. We have, like, for React, for instance, we have a page of curriculum saying, these are the major things I want you to take away from this. How do you Google this? How do you find your own resources? Because when you're in the job, no one's going to be handing you a React book. They're going to expect you to find it on your own. So what we really stress is, how do you find your own resources on your own? And I think just equally importantly, how do you learn just enough to do what you need to do? The world of tech is so in depth, and it's so easy to spend 2 weeks learning about one method. And in the meantime, now you're falling behind. And all you needed to know was, how do I call and use this function? How do I call and use this library that I've downloaded? So we work a lot with that during those first 8 weeks. And then we spend a month doing practice projects. And that's where it really all comes together. And the way we phrase that is, in order to do awesomely in your job interviews, you're going to have to be able to talk about all of these concepts and code these concepts. So when you are working on this project, if you don't understand how to do a form, add 5 forms to your project and really get that practice in. If you're really confused how to read data back from an API, find a bunch of APIs and just read and consume that data. And we're trying to give folks the free will to, for themselves, see the holes that they have and work on them, so that they're there at the end of the day, able to interview awesomely. So we do that for a month, and then we have a 5-week final project. And this is anything that folks want to work on. They have a whole week of planning where they are designing, making database schemas, finding their APIs, connecting to them with Postman, making sure that they have all the authentication and the data actually returns what they need it to return. And then a month of working on their projects. And we help oversee that. We help them plan and really show them the entire life cycle of this is how you develop a software project. And then we have sponsor interviews. So all of the companies that were awesome enough to sponsor our participants, they interview our candidates and they decide who works great. And so they don't really decide per se. What happens is it's a feedback rating form, and then we compare the company's rating form to the participants' rating form and find awesome matches with that. And we have a whole algorithm that we spit that into and spits back the best possibility. And it's pretty cool. So yeah, we do that. And then we also, before the interviews, have a whole week that's called Career Week. And that's where we have recruiters come in and talk about what does the interview cycle look like? What is a recruiter going to ask you? What is a recruiter looking for in a resume? How do you craft your resume? Let's work on your LinkedIn and get your LinkedIn's up to date. Let's get your resumes and cover letters going. So for those that don't get placed with a sponsor company, they're ready to then start applying for jobs right away. And we will work on them with that. For the people that do get placed with a company, the last month of the program is spent learning the stack that the company is going to need. So, a lot of companies use the Pern stack, a whole lot don't. And so what happens is that final month, if you need to learn Java for your job, then we kind of put you in a group with all the other folks learning Java, and we get a volunteer mentor to kind of help guide you through it and be there to ask questions. But by that point, you've learned how to learn on your own, and you've learned how to find resources on your own. So people are pretty well set up to prepare themselves for their jobs and walk in and be able to look at the code right away.
So there's two things I love about everything you've gone over. One is that you're very open with them that they're going to spend a lot of time on Google. Because people who aren't devs think I'm joking when I'm like, dude, nobody has written new JavaScript since like 2001.
I know, right?
All we're doing is finding a piece of code that looks as close to what we need as possible and then adapting it. That's it. So that is the truest thing you can really teach anybody. And then two, I really like the fact that you're not just saying like, say company XYZ wants candidate A, and they don't just get candidate A. So it's also whether or not candidate A likes company XYZ. And I love that you guys take that into consideration, because even when you're not in this program, it's so hard when you're looking for a job, unless you're coming from a place of being employed. It's so hard to make that differentiation sometimes between not just, does this job want me, but also, do I want that company? And for a lot of people, it takes 2 or 3 job, shall we say, re-steerings before you can go, okay, I need to be deliberate. And you kind of realize that you're interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to talk about both of those because the job re-steering thing, we talk a lot with them about getting that first job. You kind of have to pay your dues, right? Like wherever you can get that first job, awesome. When you're in that first job, keep track of the things that you like and you don't like. And when you interview for the next job, you will have more power of saying no, because more companies are going to want somebody with 2 years experience than no experience.
Right.
And look at your list that you've made in your previous job of your pros and cons and see if this company has it and say yes or no. I want to go back to the Googling thing because I think this is so important. And
it's so important.
It's so important. And I have to remind people nonstop for the first 8 weeks of the program that you do not need to memorize. You do not need to know this all the back of your head. Knowing how to do this does not mean that I can create a new React component from scratch and pass
Mhm.
in props and modify the state from memory. Like, that's not what it means. And I have to remind people so much. And it's because of the US educational system,
Oh, God.
right? We are
Oh,
taught that
what
you have
the
to have it,
conversation I've had about this. Yes, continue.
right? You have to have it all memorized. You can never use resources. You can never use a calculator. It all needs to be in your head. And that's just not the way it is. You will never be developing code and not have access to the internet. When the internet goes down, you take the rest of the day off work. You can't do anything, and that's okay. And it's so hard to pull people out of that fixed, but I must have this memorized and know how to do this mindset. And when they do, it's great. Like, you just see like the tension relax a whole lot, and folks be able to actually develop. Another thing we have a lot of talks about, because it kind of relates, is to think about where the stress is coming from that you're feeling right now. Is
Yep.
that stress that is from your boss and from my expectations, or is it stress that you're putting on yourself?
Yep.
And I try to be really clear with folks about this. So when folks are like stressed out about building their weekly project, I ask them why. They're like, oh, because I don't know how to make a form. And I say, can you make a form if you look at it and you copy it and you paste it and you change 5 things? Well, yeah. Like, then you know how to do this. The stress that you're putting on it is not from my expectations. My expectations are you copy and paste that sucker and you just change what you need to change. You're the one who's telling yourself you need to have it memorized. And
Yep.
so much of that comes from just this expectation we have within the school system that you have to have everything memorized all the time. And I hope that schools start changing, because that's not the world we live in anymore, right? We don't live in the 80s. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but when
Yep.
I was in elementary school in the 80s and the teacher was like, "Well, you have to learn how to do long division because you won't always have a calculator with you."
I've never done
And
long division without a calculator.
right? And it's like, I always have the entire internet in my pocket. Thank you very much. And
You
it's
know
like,
what? In the UK, it took
ten
me
years.
4 weeks to remember my own phone number because I never call me. I never
I
call
know,
me.
right? Right? And it's just, I hope that schools start changing and modernizing how they teach, because the world is modernizing. And I do a lot of like talking about how to use Chat GPT and other programs, because
Mhm.
you're going to be using that in the job.
You are. Yeah.
So take your broken code, put it in there. It will tell you what's wrong, and then look at it and use your critical thinking and see what's wrong, and add that to your list of 10 things I need to make sure I check whenever I have an error. Did I forget this semicolon? Did I forget the closing brace?
Yep.
And then move on with it. I think the fear over Chat GPT is
Everybody needs to take a breath.
they need to take a breath about it. And
Yeah.
I relate it to kind of typewriters,
Yeah.
right? So at first, everything we had to handwrite it out, and then typewriters came out, and it took away the scribe's job, right? But if you could type, if you learned how to type, you had a job. And
Yep.
now we had word processors. It's a very similar skill, computers and word processors, but it's different. So you need to learn the new tool. And I always tell folks, computers are very, very stupid. They're just very, very fast.
Mhm.
And ChatGPT just has a lot of resources it looks at. So put your code in there, let it fix it for you. You still need to have the brain behind it to know what to ask it.
Yes. It's
And
basically a matter of like, it's just adaptation. Because remember, the
yeah,
internet was a phase and social media
right?
was a phase.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of
Not
this
gonna
was gonna
stick.
last, right?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm like, the only thing on social media I've ever shut down are Vines.
Yeah.
Like, I did have a job where I had to shut down people's Vine accounts.
Oh.
Um, wah, wah. It was 2018. If you still had a Vine running, dude, it was over. You need to let that go. But it's just this is just the next generation. This is just the new
Hmm.
tool that we're going to use, and just go
Yeah.
learn. Like I, and the thing that kills me about it is there are people that are, and you know, good on them for getting their back. Like they have figured out how to get ahead of the curve on this and make some money off it. But they're literally like, I had somebody try to pitch me a 6-week boot camp for Chat GPT that was $3,000.
What?
I kid you not. Meanwhile, on this right here, I got a Udemy course I can get for $15.
Yeah. And it's like 10 hours.
Right. And
To
I'm
know
like,
like all the things.
right. Or like, I'm finishing off the Google generative AI courses, which I don't need to know how to actually program them. I'm not cool enough. I don't have those degrees and I own them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as long as I, as someone in technology, understand what the resources are, then I can work within the systems and apply that where they are. And that I think is also part of the hardest thing, that when you're first getting into tech, because, I was not a native, I don't have a CS degree. Most of what I learned through doing. My undergrad is a BFA. And so it's really great for me as somebody who transitioned into tech to hear that you're helping them so they don't have that frustration, because nobody's going to teach you. Like nobody's going to teach you how to do your job.
Yeah.
And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's just the reality of it. And at some point, somebody may take pity on you and sit you down and teach you that nobody's going to teach you how to do your job. And it's okay to go look stuff up. And I think we've all had that moment. And I think the fact that you guys help them have that psychology right off the bat, especially as people transitioning into tech, is just fantastic. Like, I love that you guys help them to update that mindset.
Yeah. And just learn how to transition from somebody telling you what you're going to do all day, every minute of the day, to being like, this is the task you need to complete. How are you going to do that? And learning those critical thinking skills in a safe space where other people are trying to do the same task at the same time. So you can kind of share resources of, this is how I thought about it, and I Googled this, or I use this resource, really helps prepare folks for when they get into that job where maybe no senior developer talks to you for a week unless you reach out to them. How do you manage that? How do you make sure you're getting work done when nobody is on your back telling you what the next step is? And so many people just don't have that. Like, again, our educational system and a lot of customer service centric jobs don't expect you to think about what the next step is on your own. And that's a skill that is so important and that folks need to learn. And I love that we help them do that.
No, I think it's awesome. Also, I would like to loop back because I can't get this thought out of my head from you saying it, but I really love that the internet being down at work is the equivalent of a snow day.
Yeah, it totally is.
Like the way you thought that, I'm like, oh my God, that's the adult snow day.
A little dinosaur comes up, you play him a couple times, and you say, okay, I'm going home.
I don't know where you guys had dinosaurs, but now I want one.
On Chrome when
the Chrome dinosaur.
Yeah, the Chrome dinosaur, the game that you play when the internet's down.
Okay. So we should pretend to be adults because theoretically this is a professional podcast. Although once I'll tell you right now, some of my episodes go off the rails. So sorry to my listeners.
As all podcasts do.
Okay, that's good to know. Like this is kind of like where a cat just showed up and owned me, and then people told me that's what happened. I was like, oh, so this is just how this works.
Yep.
So it's just podcast going off the rail is just how it works. Okay. Okay. So my question for you then is, how do you get funding? I know you're saying that you have, like, you're saying that companies donate. Like, how do the other companies participate? I mean, I'll need to see the books.
Yeah.
Let's not get all in that, but just in general, if somebody is listening and they're like, this sounds amazing, my company could use this. How do external companies get involved?
Oh, that's a great question. So you go to Techtonica.org and there's a sponsorship page. And there are different levels of sponsorship that you can do. Some companies donate some money and then their company donates time. So one thing we do is we get everybody lots of mock interviews. And so we need lots of developers to give lots of mock interviews, and companies will sponsor like a mock interview day. Okay. And that's kind of the lowest level. The full on, I want an amazing Tectonica grad. The way that works is you sign a contract, and the company donates, I think it's currently $36,000 to Tectonica, and we're a 501c3, so that's fully tax deductible. And then when it comes time for our sponsor companies to interview, then you get to interview our people and do that feedback. And it always works out that everybody's really happy. The companies get who they like and the participants get who they like. And then part of that contract is that you are giving that person a 6-month paid placement. And companies call these different things. Some are apprenticeships, some are internships, some are straight up employees at a minimum of, I think, $35 an hour.
Mhm.
And that's also a little bit dependent on where the person lives. And after that 6 months, then you can either retain them and hire them on as full time or extend their placement. That's up to you. But you now have this person in your system. And about 85% of our graduates are transitioned to full-time employment afterwards. And that number is kind of artificially low because of all the hiring freezes that have happened in the last year.
Right.
So a lot of our grads, the company would love to keep them. They try to figure out how to keep them, but they're in a hiring freeze, so they can't.
Right. Well, part of it is also by the time they've been there 6 months, they know your staff. And it is
Exactly.
literally cheaper for the company to keep them than to go try to recruit someone and retrain a new person.
Exactly. And so the way I think about it is, yes, you're making a corporate donation of the 30x thousand dollars, and then you're hiring this person at like a low rate, but that's still cheaper than hiring a junior developer that isn't effective.
Right. What
And
is
oh, sorry.
I was going to say, what is the old saying that we're all taught, that it often costs the equivalent of of that position's yearly salary to recruit the person you're going to hire?
Exactly. Exactly. And one other thing that we encourage all the companies that are taking on our participant to do is to come in and volunteer throughout the 6 months.
Yeah.
So we try to get them to come in and do office hours, to do talks, to be a mentor. Each of our participants have a personal mentor that is their personal person 2 hours a week to ask questions to and help them out. And a lot of folks have 2 mentors. And we ask the companies like, hey, send somebody from the team that this potential person's going to go on and get to know everybody. Then you're going to end up with somebody super awesome on your team that you're really excited about. And everybody then wants to go to that company because they have a personal relationship with that company. So yeah, it works out really well. And like I said, like we've had a couple of companies come back to us and say like, your graduates are by far the best people from any boot camp we've ever worked with. We want to move from hiring from other boot camps to just hiring from your boot camp. Even though there's that extra cost with it, our folks are coming in and being real awesome real fast. And we're now a few years into remote work, and our graduates are already moving up to being mid-level developers because they have that critical thinking and the ability to work alone and the ability to ask questions and all of that stuff that companies don't have. So another thing that we have is we call it the growth sheet. And it is a thing that I created based off of my experience hiring junior engineers and talking to our partners and the things that we wish junior engineers were more comfortable with. So there are a bunch of topics in there like advocate for yourself, be the employee you want to be, help somebody else, ask for help. What did you learn from asking for help? What went well? What's your burnout this week? All of that kind of stuff that people track on a weekly basis so that when they get to their jobs, they feel fully confident advocating for themselves and asking questions and helping other people out and being awesome team members. And everybody likes that. Everybody likes having great team members.
Exactly. No, I love it. So, I mean, is there anything that we haven't covered about the program that you'd want people to know?
It's wicked awesome. And we are facing the same problem that a lot of the tech industry is facing right now, as far as with all of the hiring freezes, companies being less willing to take on new folks, which is really sad because a year and a half ago, we were at the point of having too many companies want our people and than having people. And now we're really trying to find jobs for folks. So if you have a company that has a charitable arm or is looking to take on junior developers, please reach out. We would love to build a relationship with you. And like I said, it's not necessarily that you have to take on one of our graduates, but if you wanted to come in and do mock interviews, or you wanted to come in and talk about APIs, we always could use more volunteers. Or you're wanting to mentor, please reach out. Please check out our website and Techtonica.org and volunteer. We need all the help we can get. And it's a super awesome organization, and I would hate to see it not work out. Like the Ada Development Academy just had to stop doing their next round of, I'm not sure if they call it a cohort or what they call it, but they're not doing a next cohort because of the economic world right now. And I would hate to see that happen to us.
Yeah. Nope, that's true. All right, Sarah. Well, thank you for helping us and helping us learn about Tectonica. It sounds like an amazing organization. Any last thoughts or anything that you want people to know? And then we'll wrap it up.
I don't. Along with that hiring fund, I'm putting out all the pleas. We also have graduates from the program who are awesome and amazing and were affected by not being converted or laid off recently. Mm-hmm. So we also have awesome trained folks who are looking for jobs that come free to you. So if you're looking for a junior or a mid-level, wicked awesome developer, please reach out to us as well, and we can help set you up with some folks.
That sounds great. All right. Thank you very much for sitting with us today. It was great to learn about Tectonica. And I hope if anybody has anything that matches any of the needs that they have, they'll go ahead and reach out to you guys.
Thank you so much for your time today as well.
No worries. All right, everybody. That does it for today, and we will talk to you soon.